And so, it continues. Hello there, friend. Welcome back to Max's Writing Advice Q&A. In tonight's episode, thank you, Auto White Balance, in my webcam. In tonight's episode, I have a selection of questions selected randomly and stated by viewers just like you. As always, if you've got a writing question that just must be answered, leave it in the comments down below. Every week, questions are selected through a random number generator and answered by yours truly, so your question is as likely to be answered as anyone else. We have a bunch of serious questions today. Actually, one more thing before I go. Remember that with any of my videos, what you're gonna hear, the following, is merely just my advice, my opinion, and what works for me, okay? Don't take it as gospel, take it as the ramblings of one particular writer. The first question of the day goes a little bit like this. I keep having the problem of either really good characters with a story that's been done to death, or a story that's new but with kinda blank characters. What do I do? That's on the clock. Get set. Go. There's 3 million things that I gotta cover in this question. First and foremost, as I've said with all the things ever, you should write the story that seems the most fun for you, regardless of any of the things that you just mentioned. Write whatever story is the most fun, whatever excites you to write it. Why? Because writing a book is a really long process, and if you come in with something that excites you, regardless of what it is, I'll explain that in a moment, hold on to that thought, you will actually make it through. Because I've known people who pick up an idea because they think it's gonna get them published, or because they think it's gonna be popular, and they don't last. Why? Because they actually don't care about the project, and it's probably they make it through the first draft, and if they do, they don't make it through revision because they don't care. And they find a shiny new story idea that becomes the cycle all over again. This happens all the time. That's why I keep saying, please, pick a story idea that's fun for you. Now, but Max, this story idea has been done to death. Let's talk about content versus context, okay? The reason why I hate human beings when it comes to story ideas is that people do this thing where they look at something and they rob all of the context out of it. You take all of the reasons why those things happen, and when you do that, all that remains is the content. And now content, which is the things that happened, A to B, B to C, and so forth, is literally nothing. Now, why is this particularly a problem, or why does this anger me so much? And we're walking on the blade's edge, I'm about to fall and talk about cliches for 30 minutes, which is not gonna happen. Another video, another day. I've been talking about that for 3 years now. It's never gonna happen because I'm gonna be breathing fire the entire day, and I can't burn down this house. It's the one that I live in. So anyways, when you take away context from your story, and only your story idea. Real talk, okay? One to one. I must have just edited 20 minutes of me rambling, and that's not effective for my workload. So I'm gonna summarize my thoughts because the idea of content versus context is something that is really close to, me arguing about cliches, which I've done forever. Note that my emotions are way toned down now. I was screaming 2 minutes ago. When you look at a story idea or a story and you look at the events, by which I mean that you look at the entire story and you rob it of its context. When you remove context, all that remains is content. What happened? A to B, B to C, C to D. When you look at this checklist of events and you squint your eyes hard enough, that story can be whatever story you want it to. Why? Because you're just looking at facts. 2 characters go on an adventure. Man, that's basically every story out there. So forgive me if I'm a little bit on edge whenever I hear things like this story has been done to death. Things like that, I'm really radical, I guess, in my beliefs. Things like that don't matter. Why? Because when you look at story ideas like that, it's oh, a story about X, it's been done to death. Maybe I'm just crazy, but I don't think that people read books to get to the end, unless you're reading very specific mystery novels. But you read a story the same way that you write it. Writing is the act of discovery, and by that extension, reading is the act of discovery. You want to experience that world through the eyes of the characters, through the vision of the narrator, and experience it. Be a part of it, if just for a little bit. That's what makes books so vivid, and I know that it's not supposed to be an interactive medium, but it kind of is because you're picturing that world. You're picturing your very own version of that world that nobody else is going to see. It's kind of amazing. So Again, why do you just take the entire book, you take this entire journey, and just break it down to a list of events? A story about X. A story about X doing Y to Z. I'm about to ramble again, and I turned off the timer because I've just been so angry. My thing is this: instead of looking at books or ideas or story ideas as though I either been done to death or is brand new and shiny, spoilers, it's not. Because if you squint your eyes hard enough, any story idea is every story idea. Instead, forgetting about all of that junk, all of that garbage that is cliches, let's stop for a moment and ask yourself, what story do you want to write? Why do you want to write it? Does it seem fun? And then, if it actually indeed sounds fun to you, if you're excited to write the story, please, for the love of all things holy and sacred, write it. Because you can tell when a writer had a blast writing. I keep recommending these books. The Lemony Snicket books, the Series of Unfortunate Events, are so good because you can tell he's laughing and enjoying writing those terrible books about terrible things happening. I've been reading those on my Finish a Challenge, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed, but you can tell when someone's having fun. So please, for the love of all things holy and sacred, have fun, okay? Don't worry about that. Oh, interesting characters, but lame story. Cool story, but lame characters. Hey. None of that matters. It's about the journey, the discovery, reading that book, being a part of it. Write the story that is closest to you, that you want to write, the story that chooses you, pulls you in close and tells you, hey, write me or else. Find that story. Oh, and you're thinking to yourself, Max, that was a dramatic answer. I was really angry. That's like 10 minutes of film. I'm recording this digitally. That's like 10 minutes of me just rambling that it's just you're never gonna see ever. I'm like breathing fire. Anyways. Question number 2 is still a serious question, so let's take it from the top. It goes a little bit like this. Hey, my problem doesn't usually come until I've started and plotted out the work. I don't lose motivation, but I'd rather get impatient. I get the urge to finish the chapter, finish the story, move. I want to slow down a little, enjoy writing each portion, and be willing to take all the time required to finish each segment. If that makes sense, do you have any advice? If that makes sense, do you have any advice on that topic? So let's take it from the top. First and foremost, welcome back to writing advice that sounds just like life advice. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're doing something and you realize, hey, I don't want to do this thing, or I want to do this other thing instead, I would like to urge you, first and foremost, to pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel like I want to do this thing instead of that thing? Because I don't particularly... Because there's this like unspoken rule that whatever you do, you should take it slow and enjoy it. Because I guess you can't just enjoy things quickly. Pull away, take down, get rid of all of those beliefs and create, focus on what actually you want. If you actually, as you said, if you want to slow down a little, my following piece of advice. When it comes to life, you don't have a lot of control over things because life is chaotic as heck. When it comes to writing, it's still chaotic as heck, but you have a little bit more control. Why? Because if you want to take it a little bit slower, take it a little bit easier, not enjoy, but be more involved, I guess, with the act of telling a story at a more slower pace, do it. You have all of the control. Absolutely every part of the control, every part of the decision process is in your hands, okay? So again, remember when it comes to writing, you at least have that power. If you want to do something, go ahead and do it. I'm gonna give you advice, but remember that you hold that power, it's inside of you. As for a little bit of advice regarding this, I'm gonna take a leap of faith and I hope you catch me, or I hope that I'm not wrong, but is there a particular reason regarding the subject why you feel impatient? Because, there's sentences like, I get impatient. Why do you get impatient? Are you trying to finish the book as fast as possible? Are you trying to meet a deadline? Are you trying to get it done before X or Y? Stop. Ask yourself why you feel that way. Ask yourself, hey, do I want to keep doing this? The answer is probably no. Then stop. You have all the control. You hold all of the cards. Life is hectic as heck. At least when it comes to writing, you have that extra bit of power where you can say, you know what? This is how I want to tell stories. It doesn't matter if it's different. It doesn't matter if it's just like what everyone else is doing. To find the way that works for you, okay? Above all, find the way that works for you. The timer went off, which is one really quick thing. People out there, they tell you their advice, they tell you what they do, and they overlook telling you, hey, find your happy medium. Find the way that makes storytelling the easiest and the most fun for you, okay? So, if you want to take it slow, if you want to just keep writing fast, just stop, consider your options, and just start chasing, okay? Okay. And for the last question of the day, question number 3, it goes a little bit like this. How do you find energy and motivation to write while working a full-time job? I work in customer service, so in talking, thinking, and writing to customers all day, the last thing I want to do is write when I get home, which is a lot of energy in itself. Any thoughts/ideas on how to build writing into my day? Thank you. So somebody out there may be like, Max, didn't you answer a question like this recently? I kinda did. I tackle this question like every 3 weeks, but I like tackling it because every video is a person's first video, and I like to, especially now during Camp NaNoWriMo, because I got a bunch of questions of people being like, I want to do it, but I don't have the time. So let's tackle this question, okay? Writing while having a full-time job. 3 minutes on the clock, get set, go. I said all of these 3 questions were serious, and it's mostly because I have to stand here and give you the unfortunate truth. I know what it's like to have a full-time job. I mean, if you want to hear my full origin story, go to my channel and just do a search for origin story. It should be the first result. I went on and on about that, but I used to work a terrible job. 12 hours a day from 5 to 5, 6 days a week. Terrible. Awful. Stuff like that completely kills your creativity because you're spending all day working. And it was during this time in my life that I hit my lowest point, and I was sad and depressed and just generally miserable because I wanted to write, but I didn't have the time to write. And I realized the most terrible truth, and I'm gonna have to tell you this, and I hate to say this because it's terrible, but this dream, this hope of telling stories, of being a writer, being an author, wanting to do this thing, and this applies basically for everything, by the way. This dream that you have of becoming this thing, if you don't put time into it, it's never going to happen. When my life was at its lowest, I didn't get out of that until I realized that, because you can keep dreaming about how great things are gonna be, but if you don't put in the time, if you don't make sacrifices, it's never gonna happen. That's fact. Unless you put the work in, unless you make the sacrifices, it's never gonna happen. And I know that depresses a lot of people, but when I was at my lowest, that inspired me, because I realized, achieving my thing is just putting time into it, just making sacrifices, and that's what I did. How do I build writing into my day? I looked at the schedule and I asked myself, okay, what can go? What doesn't need to be here? What can get chopped the heck out? And during those days, that chunk of time came out of my time off. I had very little time off, just 2 hours in the entire day in between in between the commute and making dinner and trying to squeeze in time for working out and maybe saying hi to the family. And you had this nugget, and I'm like, I have an hour. I could spend it playing video games or watching videos, or I could spend it writing, and I chose to spend it writing. Is it terrible? Is it awful? Yeah, it's not easy, but it's the only way, right? Because if you don't put in the time, it's not gonna happen. So it was one of those realizations where it was terrifying, because I kind of realized, I'm like, I either do this, or this passion that I have, this desire for telling stories that I've had my entire life is never gonna be fulfilled. I made the sacrifices. The other thing that I did, aside from making sacrifices, is that I also dedicated time at work. I would write during all of my breaks. I would write during the 2 15-minute breaks that I had and during my lunch. I would just wolf down my lunch in 2 seconds and just write for that half hour. And I know it sounds like, and I know that somebody out there is like, no, I can't do that. What would people think of me? I'll tell you what they'll think of you. They'll think that you're crazy, which is what people used to tell me back at the warehouse / office / laboratory / the Death Star. When I worked, the people thought I was crazy because I would just rush to the second floor and just type in this attic on this super ancient desk and chair that someone left there 10 years ago. But I did it because I cared more about writing than those people's opinions. And I wrote 3 books during that time before I managed to finally quit that terrible job. It was tough work. It was a terrible choice. It was a hard choice to make, but it was ultimately worth it. Why? Because little by little, step by step, you walk on that journey, and next thing you know, you find yourself farther away from where you began and a lot closer to where you want to be. Questions, serious questions. And with that being said, I want to thank you for watching. I hope that today's questions helped, and I hope that if anything I gave you another point of view. For the time being, I want to hear what you have to say. Do you have thoughts on this particular questions that I answered today? And do you have questions of your own? Leave them in the comments down below. For the time being, again, thank you for watching. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I hope to see you on the next one.